The importance of lash primer for speed lashing and also for maximum retention. This is the #1 question, and the biggest thing that you need to know is that when you understand how a lash primer works, you're going to understand when to use it and how it's going to help you in speeding up your lash sets and also maximizing the retention of each set. So in this module, we're going to go over primer and how it works. Welcome to the module where we talk about primer and everything that has to do with it. We're going to talk about the significance of using a lash primer when you're prepping the natural lashes for the eyelash extension application itself. We will discuss the importance of using a primer, the benefits of using a consistent brand for all products and how that impacts your sets as well, and then how a lash primer can help increase speed and improve retention. So, the importance of using a lash primer. Very first thing that you need to know is that it's going to help remove excess oil, makeup, and residue from the natural lashes, and this ensures a clean surface for the adhesive to bond effectively. If you think about it like this, the easiest example that I can give you is you get a brand new phone. You're very excited about protecting the cover and the screen of your phone. So you go and you order one of those screen protectors that you stick on to the front of it, right? If you do that and you don't prep the front of your phone and you don't use an alcohol-based wipe to clean off any oil or anything like that, and you go and you stick the sticker right to your phone, it's going to fall off within a couple days. But if you take the time to properly prep your phone by removing any residue, grease, or oil that's sitting on your phone, that screen protector is going to stay on for months, right? Because you're allowing the surface of the sticker that you're applying to it to bond without anything in between itself and the phone, right? So when we remove the excess oil, makeup, and residue from the natural lashes, essentially what we're doing is we're cleansing the canvas so that the adhesive can work at its best and highest efficiency. Anytime that you are doing anything, you're applying makeup, you're painting a wall, you're doing anything, you want to make sure that the canvas is clean. So the primer is going to clean the canvas of the natural lash to allow for the adhesive to work its best. The truth is, eyelash extension adhesive does and should last 8 weeks. Your adhesive should be holding up longer than the client's natural lash cycle. So everything that people talk about and that you hear about where they say that it's an 8-week retention adhesive, that's absolutely true. And if you're using a good adhesive, it is, but it's not going to be if you're not working with a clean canvas. So a lash primer is going to do that. The lash primer is going to create an ideal pH for the cyanoacrylate adhesive to work efficiently. So this also creates a canvas with the proper pH for the glue to work at its best. Here's the thing, people have retention issues all the time and they have speed issues and they blame it on the glue. They're like, wow, I bought this Fix Pro adhesive. It's a 0.5 second adhesive, but it's taking a second or two to dry. What's going on? Chances are there's so many factors that could be at play here, but one of the big things that most people miss is that the actual natural lash may not be at the proper pH for the glue to be working its best. So the Fix Pro adhesive is a 0.5 second adhesive, but that's in ideal conditions. So you've got your humidity figured out, or maybe you don't, so you need to work on pH and other things. You've got your environment, so the temperature figured out. What do we do to set up the natural lash so that it is the ideal environment for the cyanoacrylate adhesive to work at its best and perform at a 0.5 second if that's the type of glue it is? The fixate adhesive is a 1 to 2 second adhesive in ideal conditions. So the primer is going to help to create an ideal condition, which is the ideal pH balance, so that your glue can work at its best possible efficiency. The average pH of a natural lash is around 5.5. So people's hair follicle, or people's natural hair and people's natural lashes, the pH of that sits around 5.5. The primer is going to adjust the pH of the natural hair or the natural eyelash to an optimal range for the adhesive to work at its best, which is usually around 7 to 8. And we're going to go into what that looks like and how it works. So bottom line is the lash primer itself plays a really, really important role in preparing the natural lashes for eyelash extension application. Okay, so just to reiterate, here's how it helps. It's going to clean and degrease the lashes. So it's going to remove any oil, dirt, and makeup that is present on the natural lashes, and this ensures that the adhesive bonds well to the lash, and that way the oils and the residues are not going to negatively impact how strong the glue is holding on to the natural lash and the extension that you're applying. And that is one of the biggest things that primer will do. The primer is also going to increase the strength of the adhesive bond. So it's going to give a clean surface for the adhesive bond, and it's going to help with the overall bond strength, giving you maximum retention. Like I said before, adhesive should be lasting longer than the natural lash cycle. So technically, every single person should have eyelash extensions with adhesive applied properly that does last 8 weeks. People's lash cycles are not 8 weeks, so they're going to be coming in because they're naturally shedding off the extensions. But if you're doing your job right, you're going to be making sure that the reason that their lashes are, that they're needing to be coming for a fill is not because the adhesive bond itself has given up. And primer helps to do that by cleansing and degreasing and cleaning the surface for the adhesive to bond as effectively and efficiently as possible to the natural lash. This is a big one. The primer is going to balance the pH, okay? So it's going to balance the pH of the natural lash, which is going to create the optimal environment for the adhesive to bond properly. This is going to enhance the overall performance of your lash glue, okay? When your lash glue is working at its best, it's going to work fast for you, and it's also going to hold on for a very long time for you. Those are two really important things to remember. The lash primer itself is also going to help with lash porosity, and I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. And this is another big factor in when you're choosing whether or not to use a lash primer, because you're not going to use a lash primer all the time. Not everybody needs one, and also it's not beneficial for every person, depending on their natural lash porosity. When you do use the primer can help improve the porosity of the natural lash, and this helps the adhesive to penetrate the actual cuticles of the natural lash so that it can grip the lash more effectively. It also opens up the cuticles so that it can receive the H2O and the water that the eyelash extension adhesive needs to cure. Okay, which brings me to the last point. Eyelash extension primer can help the adhesive curing process by preparing the natural lash surface, and it can kind of rough it up and prepare the cuticle so that the adhesive can dry and work as best as possible. So let's talk about different hair porosities and what that looks like when you're looking at a client itself. So typically we're looking at 3 different types of hair porosities, and again, this is natural lashes, but you're also seeing this on people's hair. It's easier to see the examples on people's hair than it is typically on lashes, but you'll learn to identify as you go through what that looks like for people and what that looks like on a natural lash. So a low hair porosity, this hair has difficulty obtaining moisture, but once the moisture is absorbed, it's going to stay there. If you look at this image here with the low porosity, what you're looking at is these little lines here. It's showing that the cuticles are really, really tightly closed, okay? So typically you're going to see this in clients that have very, very thick, very healthy, usually dark colored lashes, and they're going to have beautiful, long, thick, healthy, dense lashes, and it's going to mean that the cuticle of that hair is actually quite closed. If you think about it, there's not a lot of room in between these lines here for your adhesive to go in and to stay on here and to actually hold the extension to the lash itself, because the cuticles are very, very tightly closed. An eyelash extension primer is a great thing to use on a person with low hair porosity, because it's actually going to go and it's going to help open up the cuticles on this type of hair, and it's going to allow for the adhesive to penetrate into the cuticle itself. So it's almost like roughing up the texture. If you think about it, it's often easier to adhere something when there's a little bit of texture or something for it to grip onto. But if you're trying to stick something to a perfectly smooth surface, the chances of it slipping off are a lot easier than if there's a tiny bit of grip, right? Going back to my cell phone example with the case, if you were to take that same sticker that you're using on your cell phone case and you were to clean and prep a wall surface that has, you know, little pockets of air and it's not perfectly smooth, that sticker is likely going to stick a lot better because the adhesive itself on that sticker is going to be able to penetrate each of those tiny little holes or gaps, and that's what's going to hold it. So we want to be able to use primer to help rough up the pores and the rough up the cuticles of this low porosity lash, natural lash, so that the adhesive can work better. Looking at this middle image here where it says normal, this is where the hair cuticles are looser, and you can see that the cuticles are a little bit more opened up. And it's the ideal like lash porosity type for you to be applying extensions to, because you have a bit of room for the adhesive to actually penetrate and go in, and that's what's going to create that strong bond. It also is opened up enough that the water that is curing the glue is going to be able to come in here, and these lashes are maintaining a bit of moisture. So you're allowing the moisture to be easily retained. Chances are the person who has this type of natural lash is already retaining a bit of moisture in her lashes. This is a good example of this would be if you're looking at somebody and they have, you know, a medium thickness of natural lashes. They have fairly healthy eyelashes. On their head, it would be looking like hair that is kind of wavy, fairly healthy, and that the strands are not super thin and they're not wiry, okay? So if you look at somebody and they have slightly wavy hair, it's not perfectly straight and it's on their head, chances are their lashes are going to be similar, okay? And then if you look over to the right here, we've got an image of high porosity. So this is an example of somebody who has very, very high porosity on their natural lash. Usually their hair type will match that. So you're going to see somebody with kind of dry, frizzy hair, curly hair, people who have naturally curly hair, and oftentimes thin hair, and then also thin lashes. People who are older are often going to have more dry, brittle lashes. People who have unhealthy diets, people who are on medication that you would have filled out, they would have given you indication on their client consult form that they were taking certain medications that can increase the porosity of their hair, right? So this side here where the porosity is really high and you're looking at somebody with dry, kind of brittle lashes, whether it's because of age, whether it's because of just their natural genetics, or it's because of medications that they're on. You can see here how loose the actual cuticles are. And the problem with this here is that there's actually going to be almost too much, the cuticles are so open that they're going to be losing moisture. So they're not holding on to a lot of natural moisture as it is within their natural lash, which is why it's dry and brittle even before they've even started getting lash extensions. And then they're not going to be able to have great retention with the follicle or with the cuticles being open this much. And that's going to impact retention, and it's going to impact how your adhesive is actually drying. Chances are too that their lashes are a bit, they need a bit of love. There's not a lot of nutrients going on here, right? You can think of clients that have this type of natural lash. And again, if you're having trouble understanding or like picturing it, go look at images of people's hair types, and the hair on their heads will typically match, right? If you're looking at somebody who has, like, they have overall great health, typically they're not, like, the hair on their head is going to be healthy. It's going to be, you know, moist. It's going to be retaining all of that, and their lashes are a reflection of that as well. Where this matters and why it matters with eyelash extension primer is we want to make sure that we understand this so that we know when to use a primer and when not to use a primer, and when it's going to actually help us in our lash sets and when it's actually going to make things worse, not only for the health of the clients and the health of their natural lashes, but also for the efficacy of our glue. So let's go into this one here. Okay, so the different levels of hair porosity. Okay, so we talked about the low porosity. So that's where people have like that really, really thick, usually their hair on their head, if it's natural, their hair is going to be really, really long, really, really straight, hard to curl because those individual hair strands are so thick They don't hold curl very well when they're curling their hair. You can ask clients questions like that. Their natural lashes themselves are going to be thick, healthy, and there's going to be not a lot of porosity. Then you're going to look at the medium porosity and then the high porosity, and you're going to be able to take a look at that and then see where you want this to go. The ideal porosity for eyelash extension adhesive to work its best is a medium level porosity. And the best way to get there is to use a primer for people who have low to medium porosity. So I'm going to go back to this image here. When you use a primer on somebody with low porosity on their natural lashes, it's going to help rough this area up, and it's going to open up the cuticle so that the adhesive can penetrate and it can work effectively. And it's also going to make sure that the cuticle is retaining water, right? And water is what's curing the glue. So a great candidate for lash primer is somebody with very low porosity of their natural lash. And you want to use primer on people like that all the time, okay? People who have oily skin, you want to use it there too, because it's not only going to go and cleanse the actual cuticle, but it's going to open it up as well. And then it's going to kind of rough this surface area up. People with normal levels of hair porosity, this is also a great candidate for using a primer, and we'll go into other reasons why, but typically you can use a primer on people with normal hair porosities because it's going to help with pH and it's going to help with degreasing. So definitely a great candidate. People with high levels of porosity, so really, really sparse, dry, brittle lashes, we want to stay away from using a primer. So don't be using a primer on these people, because what's going to happen is you're going to open up the cuticle too much, and you're going to be causing an increased level of moisture that's lost, and it's not going to be able to hold. You're going to weigh down the natural lash, potentially cause more damage because the cuticle itself will be opened too much, right? And also a lot of primers will be alcohol based, and so the alcohol base of the primer itself can cause further damage to a highly porous hair, and we don't want to do that, right? It's already lost enough moisture. So really what we want to be doing here for somebody who has really, really high porosity in their hair, or they're having dry, brittle lashes, or they look really sparse, is we want to skip the primer. We want to make sure that we're cleansing always, because we talked about how the eyelash extension cleanser itself will balance the pH. So here we're gonna focus on using primer just for low and normal level porosities, but we're gonna skip over anybody who has really brittle lashes with high porosity, because it's not gonna help, and we're also potentially going to dry out their lashes further, okay? So let's talk about the pH, because I know that I've mentioned that quite a few times, and this is where it all ties together. So the pH level of just a typical natural hair, whether it's on somebody's head or a natural lash, usually sits around 5.5, okay? People with normal hair, so not greasy, not oily, just normal, there's nothing really significant about it, you're looking at just above a 4, just under a 5 level of pH. People with oily hair, so usually the hair on their head will be oily, right? And you can ask them too, like, how often do you wash your hair? Do you have issues with your hair being oily? It's going to help you to understand. Their skin is also going to be a reflection. If their skin is oily and their body is just used to producing more oil, typically their skin, their hair, and then their lashes in turn are going to be oily. That's sitting just under a 6 pH level. And then people with drier hair types and drier lash types are sitting lower than a 4. The ideal pH level for your hair type, the ideal pH level for eyelash extension adhesive to work the best is between 7 and 8. So regardless of the type of hair that they have, you can see here that a primer is needed to bring the pH of the natural hair up to the 7 to 8 pH that you want the eyelash to be at, so that the adhesive can work at its best. The goal here is to, basically what we're doing is we're prepping the canvas. So we're washing the extension, or we're washing the natural lashes first every single time, because that's helping optimize the pH. Then what we're doing is we're using a primer to help adjust the pH of the natural lash to bring it to a 7 and an 8, but we're only using a primer on people with low levels of porosity or medium levels of porosity in their hair, and not on people that have dry or brittle lashes, because we could cause damage, and the primer actually isn't going to help because they don't need the cuticle to be opened up. And then we're using the primer to manipulate the pH level of the natural lash so that your adhesive can go and work in the best environment possible, right? And again, I'm just going to reiterate the importance of that, because if we're using a 0.5 second glue like the Fix Pro adhesive and we want it to dry in 0.5 seconds, there's more factors than just the humidity and the temperature that are affecting the dry time and the retention of our adhesive. It's also the pH of the canvas that you're applying the actual extension to, right? So glues want an optimal condition and an optimal environment, and the primer is going to be what helps us to get it to that place. Once you use the primer over top of on the client's natural lashes, you're effectively changing the pH of your canvas so that it's perfectly set up for the glue to be adhered to the natural lash as perfect as possible. And then through that, what you're doing is you're maximizing the dry time of the glue so that it works as it's promised and as it's marketed. And it's also going to be able to absorb the moisture from the air to help the glue cure in the most efficient way possible so that your retention is maximized. So let's talk about when to use a lash primer and when not to use one. So a lash primer, you're going to want to use it before applying eyelash extensions, and to use it to prepare the canvas, right? So you're going to prepare the natural lashes by removing any excess oil and residue. Excellent for clients who have oily skin or naturally oily lashes. And it's also just a really, really great second step after you've already cleansed the client's lashes. You also want to use it when the client has oily skin or wears heavy makeup. This is going to degrease the actual canvas itself, because these factors can affect the adhesive's performance. And then we want to use this when a client has thick, non-porous lashes, right? So a primer is going to help open up the cuticle so that the adhesive and the water that cures the adhesive is going to be absorbed into it. It's going to rough up that cuticle and prepare it for the application process itself. So just to reiterate, a lash primer, we don't want to be using it when the client has sensitive eyes. Using any sort of additional product can increase irritation or potential irritation. If you do suspect that a new client might have sensitivities, definitely use a lash primer in the sample set and see how that impacts their experience. And this is something that you can easily remove from your protocol if you need to when you're applying the lashes. So if somebody is having watering eyes during an appointment, or anything like that, definitely remove the lash primer as something that you're using. We also don't want to use lash primer on clients with thin, dry, or brittle lashes, because the primer might lead to further dryness or irritation, as that cuticle is already having a hard time maintaining hydration, and we don't want to make it worse. So recommending an eyelash enhancer for clients like that, and making sure that you're using lash laundry as your very first step to help balance the pH will help with that. And then talking to your client about diet and anything else like that that they can do to improve their overall natural lash health. One of the biggest things that people overlook as well when it comes to speed lashing and maximum retention is just the benefits of using a consistent brand. So in every product line, if it is developed correctly, what you have to remember is that each product is developed to work within hand in hand with all of the products within that line. So when we developed Fix Beauty and the product line that we have, we designed it so that each product is working to basically hand off the lashes to the next step, and so that they all work hand in hand with each other to make sure that everything is working as best as possible. So when you use a consistent brand, it's going to guarantee that all the products are formulated with the same quality and standards to help ensure optimal results and to make sure that all of your products are working at their maximum efficiency. And then you also want to make sure that you're using a consistent brand because, like I said, each of these products are designed to work together in preparing the natural lash with the proper pH balance. And this is going to help streamline the application process itself. And it's also going to help make sure that your glue is working in the best way possible. So our lash laundry was designed to balance the pH and get it ready for the next step, which would be the engagement. And it's going to basically hand off. If you're looking at a relay and people are running a relay race, right? You're running and you have the baton and you're racing towards the finish line, and then you take the baton and you hand it to the next person in line. That's essentially what each product in the lineup is doing. And so when you maintain the same brand, you're maintaining that lineup, and it's working to help make sure that everything is working at its best level possible. Consistency in your product choice helps to build trust with clients, to make sure that they're getting the same service and everything every time they come, right? Every single time they come, it's just like Starbucks. Starbucks did so well because when you go to Starbucks, whether you're in New York, whether you are in Chicago, no matter where you are, the hope is that you're going to be getting the exact same coffee every single time. And using a consistent brand line is going to help you to achieve that for your clients. So again, one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing when things don't feel like they're working, so glue isn't sticking, something's not working, save your money. Don't go out and spend a ton of money on new products. Go into the knowledge that you have and what you know and ask yourself all the questions to see if you can troubleshoot why. Because if you're using a premium high-end product, chances are it's not the product that's not working. It potentially is just the way that it's working or the way that it's interacting with other products that you're using, or the way that it's interacting with your client's natural lashes or the environment that you're lashing in itself. And that's an important thing to consider. So just a quick note on the engagement. So Engagement by Fix, we specifically formulated this to increase your speed and to improve your retention. It's going to increase the retention because it's going to adjust the pH of the natural lashes to work within the ideal range for your adhesive, which is usually around a 7 to 8 pH level, and that's going to make your adhesive work efficiently and effectively. The Fix Pro adhesive and the fixated adhesive work best when the natural lashes are prepped to a 7 to 8 pH level, okay? The engagement is also going to remove any excess oil and residue, allowing the adhesive to bond as best as it can to the actual natural lash. It's going to ensure that the extensions adhere instantly, right? If you're using Fix Pro adhesive, it's a 0.5 adhesive. It's going to dry instantly within that 0.5 seconds when the lashes are cleansed and primed and they're at the best pH possible for the adhesive to bond in the amount of time that it says it's going to. If you're using fixated, it's going to dry within 1 to 2 seconds if you've used the primer to set the pH to a 7 to 8. And let me go to the last slide here. So proper primer application, it's going to prevent lashes from slipping or moving, which is going to cause delays in your sets and slow down the process. It's also going to lead to the adhesive not drying fast enough. It also is going to help prevent lashes from sticking together, which is going to save you time, right? And knock off time off your appointments at the end of the appointment so that you don't have to go back and continue to separate lashes, because lashes get stuck to one another and your perfect isolation is imperfect at the end if your adhesive hasn't dried properly. And the primer itself is going to make sure that the adhesive is drying as you move on. So at the end of the set, you're not going and having to fix all of those lashes that have stuck together that you had isolated, but that stuck together because the adhesive wasn't dry. So just to conclude, using a lash primer, it's so essential in preparing the natural lashes for eyelash extension application. You want to be using it in the right situations, and you want to know when not to use it. And when you understand the importance of primer and using a consistent brand, and then also knowing when and when not to use it, you can enhance your speed lashing technique, and you can also achieve maximum retention for your clients, which is the goal.